Welcome back to the High Level Human Podcast. I'm your host. I am James McGee. Episode 6. So, just like every other father, most fathers, when their sons are little, you coach sports, baseball, football, basketball, whatever, soccer, whatever they're into. You try to learn it. If you don't know it, you try to coach it. Well, I was no different. Baseball was what I coached the most of and did several years and had some really good time, made some great friends. I wasn't a terrible coach. I knew baseball a little bit. My dad was a baseball umpire for 40 years. So I knew a little bit. I knew enough about it. So then I studied it and I wanted to do the best that I could. And most of the dads did also. But there was one dad who was just a different level. This man, now you got to understand, now this was in the early 2000s, before camera phones, before all the video, and before these apps that break things down. This guy, these are 7, 8 year old kids, would bring a video camera, a camcorder, video. He figured out how to do it himself. He's a brilliant guy, very analytical. More than anything, he's just a dedicated man at everything that he does. He has raised 3 kids. Every one of them are high level. Whatever they did, they were high level. He has a son who's my son's age, who I knew him through. He still was drafted by the NFL a couple years ago, 5, 6 years ago. Still playing professional football. Just a phenomenal athlete, phenomenal human being. And it started with the influence that his dad, it wasn't just him, wasn't just his kids that he did this with. He would take the time and he was spending just countless hours with everybody's kids. It didn't matter what your kid's level was. He spent time with them to try to make them better. I'm gonna let him talk about what he does for a living because I can't even pronounce it. It's something in the medical field I can't even pronounce it. But he's a smart man. What also makes him high level is his strive to improve in every facet of life. He's a God fearing man. He was a really good athlete. He was, I believe, a college baseball player. I'll let him talk about that. But 10 years ago, he decided to start bodybuilding, and that was his life, was bodybuilding. In the past several years, he's been doing strongman competitions. He is almost 60 years old, and he is doing strongman competitions to keep the sword sharp, to keep the man being a man, and he's got grandchildren now, to show his grandkids and his kids and lead by example and show them that they can always improve and they can always keep striving. He is just a different level man. He's a high level man. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dave Quinn.
The High Level Human Podcast, a production of The James McGee Show, with your host, James McGee. He pulls no punches, he's in your face, and he keeps it real. Join him for candid discussions about life, leadership, and living the life of a high-level human.
All right, Dave, man, I really appreciate you coming. I did a little intro beforehand and just a little bit about it. Told our listeners how we met, how we came to know each other. And I'll be honest, I'm gonna tell you to your face, you were just a different level guy than the rest of us. I met you coaching baseball, and we'll talk about your kids and not just your kids. You were that way, and I said this in the intro. You were that way for every kid that you coached. You were that way, and what I like about you now is what we didn't know. We have a mutual friend, Nick, and I told him one day, I said, man, I don't know if I like that guy. Really, because you were whipping our ass.
Yeah.
You were beating the hell out of us. And he said, no, Dave's just intense. He's a good guy. I got to know you, and you really are. And I wanted you to come on and talk about what it's like. Not only you're an accomplished man yourself. You're a college athlete yourself. You are pushing on 60 years old.
Yep.
You're doing strongman competitions. 10 years ago, you were bodybuilding. You're always challenging yourself. And I know you and I talked off camera, and you've been listening to some of my episodes. You know how I feel about keeping the sword sharp. And you're definitely keeping the sword sharp and constantly challenging yourself. So why don't you just tell listeners a little bit about your background and who Dave Quinn is?
Yep. No, I appreciate it. I think you're doing great things with this podcast. And when you reached out to me, it's not my cup of tea to put myself out there like that. I prefer to stay behind the scenes. But let's go back to what you originally said. The first time I met you, or first time I saw you, same scenario. I'd moved here permanently in 97, maybe early 98, and started coaching, on the youth level. And I had Nick on our team. And of course, we all know his son, Ken, an unbelievable athlete. And I think we were playing you guys in a coach's pitch game. I think it was 7 and 8. Our kids were 7. Y'all were 8. I think, right, Jamie and them were like a year older. And I think it was maybe Bubba Mighty.
Mm-hmm.
It was you and
Bubba and I coached together for probably 7 or 8 years.
Great guys. And I didn't know y'all from Adam, but you just kind of like me, you probably had that look to you, or that intensity or whatever. And I wasn't sure about you either. And we had a pretty good team. And I remember Nick, of all people, asking me to kind of pull back the reins a little bit. And we never ran up the score on anybody. I wasn't about that, but I was like, who are these guys right here? And I think at the time you were about to be his supervisor, or it's something, the chain of command in the sheriff's department. So that was my exposure to James McGee. But, our sons have had a great time together, playing ball, growing up. Coaching was just, something at the time I felt called by God to do, really.
You did it like you were called by God.
Yeah.
You did it, and not in a bad way. I want to use just the time you put into people, and not just in your son. You always had 2 great ones, because you had your son and then you had Kenan. So you always had 2. But this was not even in your tournament. I didn't play against you in tournament. I played against you in league, and you would have some kids who never played before.
Yep.
You spent just as much time with them.
Thank you.
And that's so what gives you that drive and passion for other people's kids, not just your own?
That's one of the biggest compliments I've been given, and I really appreciate that. I'm going to go back a step further. Probably the best thing that ever happened was I had a daughter first, and people laugh about that, but it's true. So I have 3 kids. I have Kaylin. She's my oldest, doing really well. Brought me a granddaughter recently. She having her first, you guys thought I was intense. She took the edge off of what was super intense. Yeah. So we're all grateful for her. My 2 sons are very thankful she came first. So by the time Trey got here, and then Carter after, you got a toned down version of me, which was maybe a little more tolerable. But Kaylin, probably the best athlete out of all of them. And you're talking about one of them being a professional athlete. I think her 2 brothers would agree. She just kind of, I started out coaching her a little bit, and it was better. I think my intensity was too much for her, and I was fortunate at the right time to recognize that. I think you had talked the other night with you and Jamie, like trying to figure out what's best for them and what works. And so her mother did just an unbelievable job with her. She took that role. And then here comes Trey, and tying into the man's man concept. I wasn't really big into hunting and fishing. I didn't really have a whole lot of hobbies. We're very much, as people know, we're very much a sports family. My father-in-law was a Hall of Fame football coach for McNeese.
Yes, he was a great guy.
So thank you. Sports was something I really enjoyed, and kind of tying into the parenting thing. I really feel like you got to have something that connects you, and so you have the family, the dinners, the vacations, and so forth. For me, sports was just a vehicle that I wanted to use at the time to just kind of piggyback on top of what the church was teaching, what mom and dad were trying to teach. Education, as you know, is very important to me. I have a master's degree. I wanted my kids to have the highest quality education. But in my professional walk of life, I really feel like my athletic background helped me a lot in everything, not just sports in general and fitness and all the other boxes it checks. So it just seemed like a good fit. It was something I knew well, and I saw a need for the fundamentals. I felt like I had the ability to teach that. But really more importantly, I really feel like there's so many things you can learn from sports. I'm a big fan of kids playing sports, especially team sports. And Trey and his little group got going, and it was just special. And we all saw what happened there, Little League World Series. We saw what they did in high school. And just it seemed like it worked for us. So every year we stayed together. I think that was a small miracle in itself. I think we just had a lot of good chemistry. The kids were just unbelievable. I was just making out lineup cards and handing it to the umpire and letting really good athletes play.
So and I brought this up in our intro. Now, now this was unheard of. You would have a camcorder out. This is in probably 2002.
Yeah,
you'd have a camcorder, and you're filming 7, 8-year-olds and analyzing their swing and coming back with a report the next day. That's the extra mile, and and like I said, your son was a phenomenal athlete. It wasn't just about him. You spent the same amount of time with kids that had zero talent.
Probably more time.
Yeah. So what gave you those ideas, and what gave you that drive to go that extra mile?
Yeah. So, you think about what experience you would hope to get out of it if you were on the other side of it and, putting your parent shoes on or your parent hat. And number one, I was very fortunate. So all three of my kids were extremely athletic. And I thought about this the other day when you asked me to speak. I never heard one time somebody say Trey Quinn or Carter Quinn's playing because dad's the coach. They were just, God blessed them with
Well, it's very hard to say that.
God blessed them with a lot of talent.
Yeah.
And I think it bothered me a little bit, especially back then. There was a lot of daddy ball. I just got to say it. There was a lot of it's a double-edged sword. You need volunteers. We need those people. We need those people out there. Otherwise, who's going to do it? Somebody's got to step up. So grateful for that. But I mean, it's hard. One of the hardest things, and I think that's what I was blessed with, or so I'm told. I'm a very objective person. I think that's one of my strengths, and it gets me in trouble with the wife and kids. I mean, sometimes it wasn't the mean old teacher,
Mm-hmm.
the mean coach or whatever. Sometimes I was taking their side. I wouldn't have done well in the Corleone family, never taking sides against the family. Sometimes I saw it the coach or the principal's way, and so it's hard when you're a parent to take off the rose-colored glasses or just look at things very objectively. And so I think that was a gift. And I think actually my sons will tell you they were relieved, going back to what you and Jamie talked about with what could have been done differently. If anything, I probably should have pulled out a little sooner. I think Trey in particular was ready for his middle school and high school coaches to take over. But I was probably harder on him than I was anybody. And I just it was important to me that every kid got that experience. I always felt like I could, at home, if I needed to give him a little extra attention, I could do it there. But man, I tell you, when we got to practice, it was they were all like sons. I treated them all the same. Back to the technology stuff. I think the rap with me, a lot of, Dave Quinn's all about winning or practice or this or that. We practice twice a week. We practiced twice a week for about an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe, because it was important to go to church to get your homework, family time, and all that. But when we were there, it was very organized. I surrounded myself with a lot of good people. I had a lot of help throughout all those years. It wasn't just me. And I used every bit of technology that I could. I felt like I owed it to that kid. I didn't really want to talk about me, James, but here's where the passion comes from. Okay. And this isn't just false humility. It's true. People watching this, some of my childhood friends will tell you this. I was an average Joe, man. Academically and athletically, I got a little bit of height. Maybe my IQ was, average, slightly above average or whatever, but I wasn't most likely to succeed in high school. I wasn't any of those people. And I just had to work my butt off, man. I mean, I got in the weight room. I was weak. I knew my weaknesses and I wanted to get better. And weight room was one of them. Academically, it wasn't really till late high school, college. I figured out my grades needed to be better to get where I wanted to go. So I was, instead of doing the odd problems, I was doing all the problems. I was just, work ethic, trying to outwork people. And so I saw that even though I was average talent wise, I could overcome a lot with, the technical part, the reps, not just training hard, but training smart. And so when I got to this group and I saw the talent they had, that was really my first group like that. I knew with really good coaching, there's no telling how far they can go. But one thing I did want to add to that is, and the whole irony to all of it, I do have a son who's a professional athlete, and I get asked a lot of these questions. And I told you before we started, when I'd moved here, all I heard about was barb, and baseball in particular, football too. And I really was just hopeful they could make their high school team. I mean that honestly. We all saw what they did. I had 6 or 7 guys go
The high school
Division I.
team is not, especially in baseball and football too. I mean, we did pretty well, but that baseball team, I've always said this, you could make 2 teams off of that one team and very well could meet themselves in a state championship every year. So
I
that's the kind of school we're dealing with.
No doubt. And I saw that when they were little. I knew they needed, we had some really good hitters, as you know. I knew they needed to know how to bunt. Great example. Anybody who knows Glenn Shikini at Barb knows he's going to bunt. It doesn't matter if you're the cleanup guy, 1 through 9, you better know how to bunt. It was stuff like that I was like, you know what? They need to learn this, or they might not make the team. When I went to high school, if you went out, you were pretty much going to be on the team. You weren't going to, you might not play, but you were, there wasn't getting cut and all that. And I just wanted to give them the tools to where they can chase their dreams and do it, on their terms, I mean, and you talked about with Jamie the other night, I ended up coaching them in football, baseball, and basketball for all those years. They probably needed a break from me there, but just wanted to give them the opportunity to go as far as they could. And I felt like I was somebody that could do that for them, but it really worked out for them. I guess looking back, I wasn't some great talent evaluator. I didn't know they were going to end up being that talented, but I think they worked really hard. Their parents were very supportive. So they did all that. I think probably what they took from me was how to prepare, how to compete, dealing with adversity. Sports is like a metaphor for life. That was my biggest thing, man. I just feel like, and I don't mind telling you this, it was somebody I worked with years ago, really talented coworker, and struggled in a team environment, did her job. And then outside of that, hey man, I did my job. I'm good, And I just had to ask her one day, it just hit me like what you and I are talking. I said, ma'am, did you ever play team sports when you were a kid? And she looked at me funny. She was like, no. And that was the end of the conversation. She answered my question, and great woman, really good worker, but struggled in a team environment. And I just, man, I tell you, I know me, I have a degree in physics, but I really feel like my athletic background, I probably use that more than I do the math and science stuff,
So what is your personal athletic background?
So growing up, I was always a baseball guy. I just loved the sport. I was a little bit taller than everybody, had a really good arm. I was just super skinny. My parents didn't want me playing football. I was just, James, I think my first driver's license was 6'3" and 135 pounds. Nobody believes it. And I am. I think I had to work a little harder than everybody else. And I tell my kids and my childhood friends who watch this will tell you, I lost as many fights as I won when I was little. And after a while, you just get tired of, getting your lunch money took or whatever. You got to do something about it. You talked about it. No one's coming to the rescue.
Nope.
Nobody's coming to the rescue. And, I'm not into the victim mindset. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do about it? You're going to tuck your head, or you're going to bow up. So a little bit of basketball, played baseball. My big problem was when I reported to college, I was 17 years old and never really gave it much thought. I always felt like I was chasing everybody a little bit. Yeah.
And that was at University of Louisiana.
Back then it was NLU.
Yep.
And so I talked to my mom about it later. I was like, and she said, hey, you were always, the teacher said you were fine, blah, blah, blah. My parents weren't sports wasn't important to us. They wanted me to have fun doing it, but they weren't the type to hold me back to get a competitive edge or anything like that. So I got to college, and that's really probably should have been maybe my senior year. And I started filling out, and That first semester of baseball, I made like a 2.3. I'm trying to get into physical therapy school, and the grades just weren't good enough. And I got, you get promoted to a certain level to where you see your incompetence. I just wasn't probably going to play past that. And I knew that. And I really wanted to go the academic route. It was just, I'm taking 18 hours. And back then, the fall, we played probably 30 or 40 games. I didn't count, but you didn't have the regulations you do now to where we're on buses, get home late at night. I just had trouble doing both. The people these days, the student athletes amaze me because that's really difficult to do. When you see a student athlete playing well and also with that kind of GPA and a tough major, I want to hire those people, because their time management skills are off the charts. So it was a business decision. We all grow up being like a Major League Baseball player, and I saw the writing on the wall when I got to college. There were other guys better, and I think it worked out for me. I mean, it was painful, but it was a fork in the road, and just took the academic route. But
at what point did you're humble, yourself with your kids also, and I'll tell you, I don't know if my brother-in-law ever told you this story, but when Trey was a freshman, he's standing on the sidelines with Coach Shavers, who was my coach, and David's. We went to school together, and Trey come running out, and Coach Shavers looked at David and said, "That's going to be the best athlete Barb High School ever had." And knowing Coach Shavers, he doesn't say much, that's quiet. And my brother-in-law looked at him and he said, "Coach, that's a big statement." He said, "I know." And I'm sure there may be some people argue against it, but not many. Yeah. I can tell you this: he was definitely one of, if not the best athlete. He was drafted into the NFL. I'll let you tell all that. I just want to give an overview. But what I want to say, what's the most impressive, and I know that you get asked, and because you produced a professional athlete, one of the best athletes, holds national records. High school, and I'm sure in college too. I know you get asked about, hey, how do I get my kid there?
Yep.
Well, I'm gonna let you give some advice, but I'm gonna say one thing before we even start. I can tell you, I can't tell you how to produce a professional athlete, but I can tell you how not to. Don't hold them accountable. Don't make them work hard. Make them think they're more than what they are. I can tell you one thing I never saw, and I've got some godchildren, some nephews who are younger, and I go to their games. One thing I never saw when Trey Quinn was playing baseball, I never saw him walk into a ballpark with Dave Quinn carrying his bag while he texted on his phone and had some sunglasses on.
Right.
You raised a hell of an athlete. You raised a hell of a man. And your other two kids are great too. But we got to get out of the athlete mindset, because him being a great man, that athletic ability is only going to take him so far. So give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So, no, great question. I get asked that a lot. I have even people I've never met before, hey, how'd you do it? This and that. And they almost don't want to believe the truth, James. I mean, think about the odds it takes to make it to that level is crazy, right? We've all like one in almost a million or whatever. I get back to what I was saying earlier. It was important for me that all my kids tried to play sports, but I think one thing my wife and I did really good, and I strongly encourage this, and I think parents are missing out a little bit on this. We're in an area of specialization, and I get the Serena Williams stuff and the tennis, and there's certain sports, gymnastics, maybe golf. I get the start them early thing a little bit. I have some friends on Facebook, I'm so proud of my son, his 6-year-old career, and they use the word career. Trey, him in particular, but really all three of my kids, we tried to, what I would like to see parents do, you expose them to a lot of different things. So my two sons did gymnastics, soccer, anything with a ball, any sport. At the same time, my wife and I took them to the library and got them library cards. We encouraged Cub Scouts, all these musical instrument. And just like I think you were talking with Jamie, you want them to find their passion. And I had no idea what their passion was going to be. Kaylin, it ended up being, she was flipping all over the place and tumbling. You talked to a lot of her coaches. I mean, she was so explosive and strong and athletic. I mean, could throw the heck out of a ball and hit it a country mile and run fast and jump high. Just she enjoyed the cheer and the tumbling part. That was her passion. She was really good at it. If I had an agenda with Trey, and I'll put this out there, I was a baseball guy. I knew baseball maybe a little less on the injury rate than football. I mean, the Coach Shaver thing, I'll jump in real quick and piggyback a really good story. I didn't really know the guy that well. My brother-in-law played for him back in the day. Of course, him and my father-in-law know each other. Didn't know Coach Shaver at all. He called me in right before Trey got to high school, and I'm giving you the fast version. Mm-hmm. He said, "Hey, I heard your son's a pretty good player. Try to have him up here this summer. I'll let you know what I think about him before the first game." So we had him up there for summer workouts, and he comes home and he says, "Hey, they changed my schedule. I think that means I'm on varsity." Great. Anyway, when Coach Shaver and I talked, Coach Shaver loves telling the story, James. So I hope he hears this.
What a great man. And what a great man.
Oh my gosh. So according to him, I'm the first parent that's gone to him and asked that my kid don't play. You have all these parents. Why is my kid not playing? Why is my kid not playing? So as you know, you have freshman, JV, varsity. You have the 3 levels. And yes, Cannon, such an incredible talent. Trey, all of them, the whole group. Freshman football might not have been challenging enough for them, that group. I was okay with JV. I was like, you know what? There's some grown-ass men playing 5A varsity football. Yeah. And my take was, and he twists it to be funny, I believed in your son when his own dad didn't believe in him. I've always believed in Trey Quinn. He's a good athlete. I think I felt like I was being irresponsible. Like he was literally a young, he was a 14-year-old freshman. He
wasn't held back.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't holding. Yeah, and not only that, he probably should have been based on his birthday and so forth. But
that's September or
early December. Yeah. But he physically, he looked the part or whatever. But you're still dealing with 14, and not to mention mental, emotional, and all that. Now he had a really good head on his shoulders, but that was my take. Mm-hmm. So obviously, he ends up doing really well his freshman year and. Coach Shavers is always like, "I told you, Quinn. I told you." And I'm like, "Coach, I believed in him. I just, So that was the thing with Jimmy. But what was the follow up to that?
So at what point? Did you realize that he was going to be special?
Yeah. So you expose them to a bunch of different things. You let them tell you what they're good at. And I want to share this with parents. This is a really good lesson too. So yes, thank you for getting me back on track. So I'm a baseball guy. Coach, you saw what we did in the Little League World Series. The team was unbelievable. Trey was a big part of it. So I wouldn't make my kids do anything, but I wanted to be available to them. Well, as we all know with baseball, there's a lot of, batting cage, hitting, getting your swings in, pitching, bullpens, getting your work in. And he would do that. He would do it. He wouldn't want to do a whole lot of it. He would do just enough to, obviously he was talented. I'd go inside and sit on the couch. He was always pulling me off the couch to throw the football. And back, it makes sense now, right? So back then it was more, "Hey, Trey, let's go hit. You hadn't hit in a while." All right. Versus, begging me to throw the football to him. So he ran every route possible. My neighbors wondered how we ever grew grass. We always played in my front yard because it was flat. And, in, out, slant and go, fade, go. We did it all over and over and over. And I would have to tap out. I'd be, my arm's sore. I'm like, "Trey, I'm tired." And I probably should have saw that back then, but I didn't. So fast forward to high school, I think he just he had some success. And look, he was all district as a freshman in baseball. I mean, we won a state championship, and he just felt like his heart was in football. And that was a hard day for the family and probably coach. And it was tough, because he had gone through so much with that group, and he felt like he was kind of abandoning them a little bit. He felt like he had an obligation to them to kind of see things through. They had, going into high school, they had some really big goals. They wanted to win multiple state championships in both sports. And they came, you know, they won one in baseball and they came really close in football. They won 2 in baseball. But so we just kind of, you know, prayed about it. The day he told me, you know, hey, I'm done with baseball for good, there was teams still wanting to draft him when he was coming out of high school, just in case he changed his mind. That's the kind of talent he had. But I prayed about it. I knew there'd be, you know, as we see in the NFL, he's had some ups and downs with the injury bug. And that's the part that's hard with that sport in particular. But when you look at it, I mean, God gave him some special gifts when it comes to playing receiver. You know, it shows. So he found his passion. I mean, to this day, and he's playing with the Michigan Panthers right now in the UFL. He just loves playing. You know, I think there's a lot of guys that are playing maybe for different reasons. Obviously, they all want successful careers and maybe the contracts and the Super Bowls and the Pro Bowls and all that. He just really, we talked about it recently when he left. I mean, he just loves the game that much still. So he found his passion. I mean, that's part of what you want as a parent, right? Is for them to find it, not you. But I think we're all guilty. Like, we'd like to try to steer them or guide them a certain way. And maybe I felt that way a little bit with the baseball thing, but luckily we just kind of let him go. So long story short, I mean, I know there's a big movement out there. You know, you got to play year round and you got to have all these trainers and coaches. We didn't do any of that.
I think that's a terrible model.
It's not good. And look, I'm not, who am I to judge? You know, there's a lot of people out there with personal trainers. I don't think a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old kid needs a personal trainer. My kids played outside a lot. I'm thankful, you know, you're in the same boat. I mean, the cell phone, social media thing kind of came when they got older. Yeah. So I get that's an extra challenge. I think that would have been harder. I still think, you know, my kids we were outdoors people, you know, and I was with them a lot. Part of me playing with them, I enjoyed it, but I was making sure they weren't in there. You know, my sons are gamers. They both like the Xbox video game stuff and moderation. I think anything in moderation is fine. And, but, you know, just being active. I think, you know, I wanted healthy kids. You know, both of us are into the fitness lifestyle. And so there's all those boxes to check there too. But that's what worked for us.
So you already know how I feel about Trey as an athlete, and off camera I told you I've always how I feel about him as a human being. Was that a concern of yours early on when you started thinking, man, this kid's going to be special? I got to keep his ass grounded. Or was he just naturally, did you have to put a lot of work into that to make sure he wasn't arrogant? Because ego's a killer of a lot of people.
Yeah.
Was he always that way, or how much work did you have to put into that?
Yeah. I think, you know, my family as a whole, all of us, humility is like right at the top, man. And, you know, everybody's opinion doesn't matter, but the people that are close to you, that matters, right? And people like yourself and others have made that comment. This is going to sound funny. One of the best compliments I got not too long ago was a recent coworker. She'd been with us about 6 months and kind of pretend mad, not really mad, but, you know, acting like it. And she said, I'm mad at you. You know, I've been working here 6 months and you've got a son playing in the NFL and you haven't said one word about it. And I kind of jokingly told her, I said, you know, you just paid me a compliment there. Thank you. You know, and Trey knows, and my kids know, I'm so proud of all 3 of them. They far exceeded my expectations as people, all 3 of them. They're just really good people, just like your 2 are. But of course, I'm happy that, you know, he's living a dream. Every little boy, I think at some point wants to be a professional athlete, you know, and it can only happen for so many. And as you know, and many know, it hasn't been all peaches and cream. I mean, there's been a lot of bumps in the road. And I think probably if I was prideful about it, he's overcome a lot of adversity. I think a lot of people think it's all, you know, peaches and cream or whatever. And it's really not, especially in his case. He's had to fight the fight, and he's still fighting the fight, you know, the whole Mr. Irrelevant thing, you know. We can have a separate podcast about that, you know, the whole thing. But he was, I think my wife and I, you know, there's some things we could have done better. She and I both agree we were the best gift you can, I want to say this on your podcast, really the best when it comes to parenting and building a man's man. I think, number one, you know, God's got to be first in your household. Number 2, you have a strong marriage. That's one of the best, if not the best gift you can give your kids. And because after I watched the episode with you and Jamie, I kind of did that a little bit. I did some introspection. And for the most part, there's little things here and there. Should have pulled back here, should have pushed harder there. You can nitpick those. I think with me and my wife, we were both working full time. Once we got 3 kids being active. Once we had no help, we had no family in town at the time. Really, it was not a lot of support from you guys in the community, but it was stressful. At times it was stressful. And she and I kind of quit dating each other a little bit. And, we were excellent parents. We were both so focused on the kids. And the Bible talks about your spouse comes first and the kids are supposed to come after that. And I think sometimes we had that reverse just because we were so focused on the 3 kids. And we felt that at the time, we felt like we were doing the right thing. And to some degree we were. But if there's something I could go back and maybe change, it'd probably do a better job as a husband, But as far as Trey and all 3 of my kids for that matter, the humility is just something that's how we live our everyday lives. But I will make a confession, and I am a person of faith and I don't hide that. One of my biggest motivators, James, is I always feel, not just with Trey, but Kaylin, Carter, myself, I feel like if we ever abuse the gift, and that was a gift, and he's been given a great gift. I always felt in the back of my mind, if we were arrogant or cocky or all over social media, look at this, look at that. That's part of why I don't post a lot. I felt like at any moment God could take that away if it got abused. Like, hey, I blessed you with this great gift, and you're not using it the way I intended for you to use it. So it really made it easy for me. I mean, look, man. There's so many times I wanted to pound my chest or, hey, that's my kid or all that. And inside I was, and Trey and I have had some really good private moments together. He knows all that really, for me, all that really matters is my 3 know. Those 3 know. Yeah. It'd be nice, what everybody else sees or whatever, but that didn't matter to me. It never has.
So we'll get back to Trey. I want to talk about the college recruiting process. I know that took some years off your life, and that was a great, you heard me say that last week. It was a great time in our life. And at the same time, I don't know how I didn't kill somebody during that process. Yeah. So it's a pretty intense process. Let's talk about Carter a little bit. Carter, hell of an athlete. But he's different than Trey as a person, great person, but Trey's quiet. He's reserved. Carter was always a clown. And at what point did you realize that, hey, I gotta raise him a little different? I gotta make some adjustments because he's not going to respond like Trey did. And I think because I compare Carter to my daughter Macy, and they're around the same age too. What I look at, it was pretty easy with Jamie, because Jamie was, he's had his challenges, but my daughter was more like me. And independent and just strong head. And I'm like, man, if I can ever figure out how to channel that she's going to be great. And she is. She's about to graduate LSU and is doing great. Carter was yours. He's a great athlete, great kid, but he wasn't Trey.
Right.
So what kind of adjustments did you see you had to make for our dads out there that have kids who have every bit the same potential or ability, but they're different? You can't treat them the same.
No, James, that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up, and I'll try to put myself out there a little bit as best I can. So, just like when you're coaching somebody, we all hear the cliche, and when do you pat them on the back, when do you kick them in the butt? There's an art to that, and parents with multiple kids. So you have your outline of, I heard you say the other day, there's no instruction manual that comes with these guys, but you have your virtues that are important to all your kids. Hey, man, we're going to go to church. We're going to love the Lord. We're going to treat people a certain way, so forth. So Kaylin, the love of my life, my beautiful daughter, she's born first. Thank God. She softens me up. She taught me so many things. She made me a better person the second she was born. Helped Trey out. Kind of, I think I'm being honest, man, because we have a lot of mutual friends. Sometimes when you're a sports guy, you're a man's man. That's what this podcast is. Look, I'm being transparent. When you're a man, I'm a man's man. If I had a firstborn son and he was that good of an athlete, I don't know that I handle it the same way. I'm being honest.
Yeah, I
being
agree with that.
transparent to the audience here. So now here comes Carter. So the best part about Carter is he is a different cat. He's the party in the box. My sister always says that there's an apocalypse, that's who she wants with her. He's a survival guy, man. He'll find a way to make it work. And so I'm going to tell a little story that's going to kind of bring it all together, and it'll give parents an idea. So when I was coaching Ken and Trey, that first group, and they'll tell you this, I was rigid. If I had to go back and do it again, and that's where Carter kind of comes in. I was very strict. I'm a big respect guy. Respect your opponent. Now, people have seen us at some of our low moments, and you punch us in the mouth. Sometimes we wanted to punch back, but we were never going to throw the first punch. I always wanted to respect my opponent. I'm not into the trash talking, the pointing fingers, all that stuff. We wanted to win decisively. And the man's man thing, old fashioned, shake their hand after the game. You look them in the eye. They know they got beat. We don't need to talk about it. We don't need to rub it in. You never know. The script could flip when you play them again the next time. So show respect. So whenever we'd score a touchdown, I was big into this. Hand the ball to the referee. I was that guy. I was that dad. I was that coach. So that's what we did. You hear it, act like you've been there before.
That's right. That's right.
So they get to S.J. Welsh. They're not my players anymore. Now they're with their middle school coach, and they're playing each other in the Colt Bowl or something. And you might have been there, but you should have been there. I think Jamie played his 8th grade year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He did.
So at the end of the year, they play each other, and they do it during the school day. And I decide I'm going to go, leave work. Trey scores a touchdown, and he does LaDainian Tomlinson. It's like a little flip that LaDainian used to do with the football. And I'm about to come unglued. I'm like, do I go over there right now and whip his ass, or do I wait till we get home? And I watched, and they were having a blast. They were having so much fun. I said, you know what? I'm not even going to say anything. Coach loved playing with those guys, and they loved playing for him. He gets to Barb. We start scoring touchdowns. He comes up with this little no ceilings thing, and I start seeing like a vibe, like some energy on the sideline. My little old school ways. We get to college, and we get specifically to SMU, and he scores a touchdown, and he does some little celebration, and I have no idea what it meant, So I go to Carter, who's savvy with all these things. I said, Carter, what was that? And he explained it to me, and so Trey and I get on the phone a couple days later and talking about the touchdown and the celebration. And I said, what coach think about that? And he goes, oh, he loved it, man. I mean, it took us to another level, and the players were all fired up, and we played better. And so I think it kind of opened my eyes a little bit, to maybe adjust to the times, adjust to the situation, adjust to the personality. So here comes Carter's career, and he was that guy, and so I think Trey kind of the same thing. Kalen helped Trey. I think Trey helped Carter, and Carter's had a lot of swagger, man. Both my sons, I think when the bullets get firing, I think those are two guys I'd want in my foxhole. Maybe they're not marksmen, skilled marksmen or anything, but when the going gets tough, those are two guys I want with me for sure. And he's that guy. He brought a little bit of that swagger, and his coaches, they liked it. His teammates fed off of it. He was kind of like, I hate to say this, he's going to love hearing this, maybe not. He was a lot like me when I played. The people who played against me didn't like me. The guys in the other dugout hated me. My teammates liked me. I was that guy, and that's kind of the guy he became. And we just learned to with you still have to have boundaries, and we tried to do that as best we could. But let him to some degree be his own person. Because, he's done a really good job with that. His brother set the bar really high, and his mother and I have worried about that at times, that maybe, how does that work? And all three of my kids love each other. They all have a great relationship. Trey's been his biggest fan, and vice versa. But I thought I think it's fair to say that Carter had that shadow a little bit. He had to work through that a little bit. And
there's no doubt about that. And I think he handled it well. And I think he handled it, socially. I think he handled it on the field.
Yep.
Because he's a savage on the baseball field, and He played football a few years too.
He did. He just same thing like Trey. I just think
He
found
realized
his
what was going to be
passion.
his thing.
He wanted to play Division I baseball, get a scholarship, and he did that. So
I never told you this, and this just came to my mind. So Jamie was a year older. He graduated, and so this was the year that Trey was a senior. And I was somewhere, and there was some parents talking, and they didn't know me, and they weren't bad mouthing Trey, but he was that successful, and they were looking for something. And so they started going with the no ceilings thing. And I finally, and I'm like, I had enough.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, look, and talking about he was arrogant. And I said, obviously you never met him, or you don't know his dad, you don't know. You're looking for a reason, because he is the most humble, just most kind man that there is. I said, you're just looking for a reason. Get off of that kid. It's not even close to what you're saying.
Look, I could piggyback on that for your listeners. And I say failed. I don't know that I failed. I just wasn't ready. So I'm a big preparation guy. Everybody who knows me, I mean, I've got my bullet points here for talking to you. You know, I'm going to come prepared in anything I do. When I was coaching, my academic career, you know, my strongman, everything I do, I'm just going to outwork you. I'm going to try to just be as prepared as I can be. I didn't have my family prepared for when Trey, you know, when he went to LSU and he became a professional athlete. I don't know how I could have prepared him for the social media age, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so
it's a big deal.
The hardest thing we had was to that, and I'll have a solution to it or an anecdote, but you know, so obviously there's haters. I mean, no matter, you know, it's hard to wrap your brain around it. Like, what did we do to you? But I didn't, you know, that's why I didn't do Twitter.
You were better than them. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. So I didn't do all that stuff. You know, the only reason I even have Facebook is my wife got tired of answering my friends, you know, hey, tell Dave this, she made me a Facebook account instead of being the middle person. So I didn't like social media, James.
Yeah.
I didn't really like cell phones. I didn't really like social media. I'm glad I see the value when it's used properly or within reason. But man, I'll tell you, when, you know, you find out how fickle fans can be, and most people know this, but as a parent, you can say whatever you want about me, man. I mean, I really don't care. I think as humans, we prefer to be liked. I mean, most people would probably prefer to be liked than hated, but if you hate me and I don't know you, you just don't know me. Like I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I think when you attack my kids, man, when you, especially early on, when people started saying stuff, I didn't handle it well, you know, and I wanted to fight people and hunt them down and track IP addresses and all that kind of stuff. And my wife did too. We're both like that. You don't mess with our kids. And then after a while, and I think it was Dabo Sweeney of all people that really worded it well, how I felt, but he worded it really well. He said, look, man, you know, if you wouldn't go to that person and ask them for advice, why do you care about what their opinion is? You know? And so that's something to share, because I really feel for the parents today. Now I had to fight those social media battles when Trey became a college and professional athlete, but like today's world with all that's out there and the cyberbullying and things that are, that's a different animal, man, you know? And so I tried to fight it a little bit we really put off late when my kids got cell phones, and, you know, now you got, you know, the young ones have them and all that. It's just, that's an extra, just a difficult thing that's placed on parents' plates right now. And I don't know, that's tough.
Before we talk about one of the best sports moments of our lives that we shared together, let's talk about some of the other ones. Trey was definitely special, but you had some other ones out there that you were a big part of. Kennan, which Nick will say in 100% how much of an influence that you were on Kennan. Gunnar Leger, you coached him. He's coaching now at UL baseball, right?
Gunnar is the pitching coach at UL right now.
Who else was?
The Jordan twins. Both played at LSU.
Both played at LSU.
Big contributions there. Peyton McLemore's, I think he's at Texas Tyler coaching now baseball.
And that was all part of the 12-year-old All-Star team. Let's talk about that year.
And going back, they were my first T-ball team, 6 years old. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that year of the of the Little League World Series, and that's a big deal. That doesn't
Yep.
happen. That's only happened what 3 or 4 times maybe in this area. And we're a
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
baseball area. I mean,
Yeah.
Barb High School is one of the best in the country every year. But to make it to the Little League World Series, that's a big deal. And you were the head
Big
coach.
deal. I was the assistant for
Okay.
that team. Charlie Phillips was
Oh,
the
that's
head coach,
right.
and there's a story with that too. But so for years we had done our own thing. I don't think we said it yet, but when we were talking earlier, so I moved here. I'm not from here. Of course, I appreciated the history of South Lake Charles Little League. It was really like a feeder to Barb. It was the thing to do. Our group I felt like they needed to be challenged maybe a little more. They didn't want to just stay locally, and I think they needed to be pushed a little bit. And I mean, I took some heat for that. It is what it is. I mean, we would by the time they got to high school, they had been baptized, by fire, I guess. They had been placed in challenging situations. I was a big believer in that, James. I took no pride in like being the big fish in the small pond, and like I never understood what people want to win so bad that either the deck's so stacked or the deck is so stacked, or just run ruling everybody all the time. You don't grow from that. Sometimes your best learning experience come from really difficult losses or difficult defeats. So I always made sure we got beat a few times. And if that meant traveling, if that meant back then, it was kind of like you talked about. It wasn't the thing to do at the time. It wasn't maybe the popular thing. Here's the thing: the kids really enjoyed it. They embraced it. They loved it. It was never about. Of course, I had some ideas of what I thought was best for them. Parents bought in. So fast forward to the 12-year-old year, they felt like that was an experience they wanted to participate in. Wasn't well received by everybody. Here we come for the 12-year-old year to play, and but they had a special season. Charlie Phillips was the head coach there. I was not really a little league guy. Yeah, I told Charlie, and people know this now about me. I just really wanted to teach, man. I wasn't really into it for all the other stuff. Just behind the scenes, he was going to let me coach. All I wanted to do was help them be their best. And Charlie kind of handled the media and the newspaper stuff. That's not really something that interests me. And Charlie and I have always worked well together. He helped me with that group in the early years, and he's a great guy. He's well known in the community, great baseball mind. But at the end of the day, we had some special players, man. There's no getting around that. It's somebody asked me this the other day, about that experience. So, Trey, he threw a no-hitter the first time he went out there. We started Ken in the first game. He was lights out, struck out just about everybody, threw 80-something miles an hour. Right off the bat, everybody's like, who are these people?
Yeah. At 12 years old.
At 12 years old. And what I remember, and you've touched on this, we kind of had a little following, and it was because how they played the game. It was how they carried themselves. They didn't walk around the park acting like they were the Beatles or something, and people like that. People embrace that. We're from the Bible Belt. There's some good people down here, and I think we represented our area well. So anyway, Trey's throwing the no-hitter. Charlie's kind of letting me do my thing. I'm calling the pitches. And the most nervous I've ever been in my life, next to maybe my wedding day when I saw my wife for the first time in her dress, I'm calling pitches, and I know I see the scoreboard. I know he's got a no-hitter, and I know that if I call the wrong pitch and somebody squares one up, it's on me. It's coaches lose the games, players win the games, and I mean, I've got a clipboard and I'm charting everything, and I look down and I'm shaking like a leaf, And they had some good hitters at the top of their order, and we had a lead, which is helpful. I think we were up by a good bit, 6-7 runs, and so I knew I could walk a guy or two, or Trey could walk a guy or two, and that'd be okay. It wouldn't really hurt. So the third time through the order, most guys will tell you this, the hitters have seen you now a little bit. They get a better feel for what you're about. He had a low 3/4 delivery that a lot of people and him and Kenny were throwing gas, man. I mean, let's just put it out there. They were dominant. But I was a little nervous about those first 3 or 4 guys. So we nibbled and we did what you call pitching backwards. Instead of start people out with fastballs, you start out with off speed, mix it up a little bit. Somehow we got through that game. He throws a no-hitter. And I mean, I needed some Valium, man. I was just, emotionally drained. We get some momentum going. Looks like we're going to make a run. Do I feel like we were the best team there? Yeah. It didn't work out for us that way, but I thought the kids really represented Lake Charles well. I mean, it's not just how they play. It's just, like you said, the type of people they are, even in their interviews and just how they treated the fans. Everybody wanting autographs and all that. They handled all that really well. And it's a testament to their parents too, just the humility and the kind of people they are.
And then a few years later, they are playing to go to the state championship game in football. And I know you and I talked off camera a little bit, and Jamie and I talked a little bit about it. We're going to do something. That game should be highlighted.
Yeah.
That is a big game. To me, definitely in the state, if not the country, one of the biggest comebacks in the history of high school football or high school sports. And you heard me talk about Jamie about this. I think the separator, they were talented.
Yeah.
Kennan just talented. Yeah. Jamie, talented kicker. Trey had Deshaun, had Gunner, had all these.
Yep.
Courtney, the running back.
Yep.
What got them through? You're looking at 2 minutes, with 2 minutes of what, 17 seconds, 10 seconds, something like that. We're down 27 points. That is a mindset.
No doubt.
These kids, as a group, you can't flap them.
Yeah.
They're unflappable. They're
different.
not going to they kept it together. And their head coach, Mike Contreras, who's just a prince of a man, one of the best influences of my son. And
Great
I know
guy.
you feel the same way. His wife and I, we worked together.
Yeah.
And I knew, I don't know at what point, that's what I want to ask you, at what point in that game, and I'll tell you what point that game, the game I knew we were going to win.
Yeah.
The first onside kick, when we recovered it, because we had walked down there. We were ready. We were conceding. We had walked down. Everybody's crying. Everybody thinks we're losing. After that first onside kick and we recovered it, I saw the energy. I looked at Sharon. I said, call New Orleans and book your room. We're going to the Dome. She said, there's no way. I said, I'm telling you, I know these kids. We're going to the Dome. It wasn't about their talent. It was the way they're poised and they didn't let anything get to them. So tell me what's going through your mind.
Yeah, no, we could make an entire
we're going
about
to.
that.
We're going to.
I think I'm wanting to give some insight into your viewers, the manly man, the raising kids, all that kind of stuff. So a little backstory to that. The year before, we lost a heartbreaker to those guys. Same team.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, West Monroe, perennial powerhouse football program, just uber talent. That game that you're talking about, three future NFL starters played in that game. So the talent on the field was just amazing on both teams. Year before we get beat, it's a heartbreaker, another parenting moment. So mine in particular, and Trey has been a great kid his entire life. If I had any issues with him, and sometimes they were public to where people could see, and that was unfortunate sometimes because we couldn't do it privately. He and I both are like this. He especially, I think he hates to lose more than he likes to win. He hates to lose. And so after that loss the year before to West Monroe, I'm waiting outside the locker room. They're all coming out. Well, all of us, right? We're just all you guys. We were all a family. We loved them. We hugged them. Outcomes did, we want to win, of course, but we're going to love on our kids. And everybody leaves. My son didn't come out yet. Coach Mike comes out. He's locking up. I'm like, where's my son? I don't know. Well, I find him, long story short, he's up in the stands just crying his eyes out. I felt for him. And so what do you do? What do you say? Like a lot of people man, what do you do? What's the right thing to say? And I didn't have words, but like you said with Jamie, you were there.
Mm-hmm.
So he and I sat in the bleachers a good hour. And I don't even think a word was said. We just sat there. And he's that type, and Ken is that type, and that group's that type. They're resilient. And it was a tough day. But what do you do? Like you said, nobody's coming to the rescue. Nobody cares, whatever. Fast forward a year later, with those guys, I can't tell you how many times we played in games when they were little to where we were losing by 8 or 10 runs. There's some of their best work was not on video or to the public or whatever. Their parents saw it. I saw it. Just like you said, their makeup. And I would love for all parents to be able to see that game, just for their kids to see. You're never out of it. You hear that, right? Cliche, until the whistle blows, until the last.
We have proof.
Yeah, we have proof. And it's not, and I'm sorry, no disrespect to these other teams, but this West Monroe team was the real deal. And for most of the game, they were running up and down the field. We couldn't really get going on offense, and they were handing it to us. But until that final second ticks off, man, and it's really hard to. You can't do that overnight. You can't just do that. I think it's something that you groom over time. I tell people all the time, especially the baseball parents, let them fail. It's okay if they strike out. It drives me nuts. And look, I mean, I'm there. We all want to see our kid hit the home run, score the touchdown, get a hit. The thing about sports, I mean, especially baseball, I mean, right? You hit 300, you got out 7 out of 10 times, and you're good. Let them fail. Let them learn how to deal with all that. And I think men are maybe a little better about that. I know, it's hard, but we all as parents want our kids to have a better life than we did. That's a given. But what you gotta, I never wanted to make, I'll say this, I never wanted to make life easy for my kids. I wanted to prepare my kids for a difficult life, if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
And
I'm going to use that one.
To me, it makes sense. And sometimes me and my wife would butt heads a little bit, because I was like, hey, man, he's going to make an F. And sometimes I think, women want us to fix it, like make it go away or do something about it. And of course, hey, man, you're not making good grades here. You're doing this or that. I was more that guy. And look, and I counsel people like this, some friends and people I work with and in the community. It's like, I'm sorry, man, like the elementary and middle school years, I don't know. Look, no disrespect, I don't know colleges looking at their GPAs. So to me, like, you build the foundation right there. Let them screw up. Yeah. You let them find out what it's like when they come home with a bad report card, or, they don't get to do this or that or whatever. High school, I get it. Like the GPA matters. And by then, hopefully you've laid the foundation to where, they figured it out. But I'm a big believer in sometimes you just got to let them fail, man, and let them figure it out, sink or swim. And, but I see so many people, and it's hard not to, because parents are good people. They love their kids. They want to make it easy for them. They want to step in, don't be the helicopter parent, don't, be there. Hey, man, his safety's being compromised. Okay, I need to talk about that, coach. But playing time, or, the teacher said this about my homework, or blah, blah, blah. Let them fight their own battles, man. I was really big into that. And I think that group as a whole, we just we were there to guide them and kind of be there if they needed something. But they showed up in that moment, I think. I don't think there was a coincidence to that at all. I think a lot of teams, right, and we would have been understandable. Hey, man, maybe next year, but not those guys.
That's something that I think there's things that develops that. That's one of those things you can't teach. And you get somebody with a quality like that, it's man, it really is
no, that's a big argument, like nature versus nurture. And that's a good question, because I do think some people are born with that, but I also think that it can be sharpened. I think you can, Bill Parcells used to say, if they don't bite when they're puppies, they're not going to bite. Yes and no. I think some guys, it's natural leadership. It just comes natural for them. I think others, it can be developed. But not everybody needs to be a leader too. I mean, we need, Chiefs and Indians and so forth. And that group they just worked well together. Like any corporation you'd want, or team or whatever, that's what you want. And
well, I never asked Trey or Kenan or any of the other ones this question, but I will ask them when I get them on. I asked Jamie one time years ago, I said, at what point did you realize y'all were going to win the game? He said at kickoff. He said, we never thought we were going to lose. I said, when you were down, he said, we always knew we were going to figure it out. Well, that's the mindset that, if you really look at it, that was a little delusional, but that's the mindset you have to have. Yeah. They were never taken out of the game. He said, when that kid missed the extra point, he said, I knew I was kicking a game-winning point.
As a fan, I remember that happening and thinking, you always know those missed extra points. You got, oh man, they can haunt you.
Yeah.
But we were down 27.
Yeah. Like you heard me say last week, I was never worried about Jamie making that.
Yeah. Oh, he was clutch.
I could see him doing what the other kid did when you're up 4 touchdowns and you miss one because it didn't really matter.
Right.
Now that was something he had to understand later on in life that, it mattered and he did. But I knew there was no, it wouldn't have mattered how bad the snap was. He had a great snapper, great holder. It wouldn't have mattered what anybody else did. He'd have carried it over there. He'd have figured out how to get there. I knew that.
All this Ken Infantino, Trey Quinn talk. Last I checked, I think it was your son that has all the scoring records or whatever. I think I know he.
If you go to the game,
he kicked a lot of extra points and field goals. I
went to a game this past year. A friend of mine's daughter was on homecoming course, so we went to the homecoming game. So on the program, all the records are there. Yeah, they're all in there pretty equal. So that program is dominated by Trey Quinn, Deshaun Smith, Jamie McGee, Ken Infantino. They're all in there, and that class will just, like Jamie talked about last week. His record, he had to make them. He had to make those kicks.
He made a lot of them.
The opportunities that he got because of the offense that he had, that was just a special class. Their records, to me, are pretty safe because to break the records that they hold, you're going to have a. You're not. Okay, there may be another Trey Quinn come around. But he's going to have. He better have a Kennan with him.
Right.
They better have a Deshaun, and they better have a Jamie. And I don't know if you'll ever assemble a team like that at that high school. So that's something I know that both of us are proud of. Let's talk before we go. Let's talk a little bit about the college. I know we could do a whole nother on college recruiting.
Yeah.
You and I are big. We share a lot of similarities big on loyalty, big on your word is your word. Yeah. And I realized that there wasn't as many during the college recruiting process. There wasn't as many men like us.
Yeah.
And because I told Jamie, I said, hey, you heard me say this last week. I said, once you commit, you're committing. Well, they weren't playing by the same rules.
No.
So I have a little bit of different opinion about that. Now it worked out. He played for a great coach. He had some really good opportunities. But that people don't, unless you're really into it, and y'all were way deeper than we were because of the amount of recruiting was being done. That's a cutthroat process.
It is,
but it was a great time. You had to. It was a great time to spend with your son. But that's people don't realize that.
Yeah, no, that's something that comes up a lot, and I get consulted on that quite a bit with parents who have kids that are being recruited, and they fall back. And of course, things are different now with NIL and all that kind of stuff. We didn't have that, but I had a few things that were important to me, and man, I mean, it's how it worked out. I mean, we all know Trey goes to LSU and then he ends up transferring to SMU. There's a lot to unpack there, but my biggest thing with Trey, and he agreed, our word has to mean something, man. And that culture drives me nuts. Mm-hmm. Just get rid of the word commitment. Like, don't even call it a commitment anymore. Like an agreement or something. Don't use the word commitment because you're right. And look, I have a lot of friends that are college coaches. There are some really good ones out there. And there's some, it just the nature of that business is different. But
their careers are on the line over 18-year-old kids' decisions too. So I understand it from the coach's perspective. So I do understand that.
Getting back to and something I shared with Coach Miles when he was getting recruited at LSU. Hey, a good man, get the degree, go to the NFL. The good man for me was always number one. Always number one was. And look, I always wanted Trey to live that dream, and he did. But for me, a good God-fearing man had to come out of this process, the education, and then hopefully a professional career. And so that begins with like our word has to. I'm like you. I'm old school with that, man. If a Quinn tells you, like today, if I'm coming at 4:30 or whatever, and I'm not here, call the police. And if it's got to mean something. And so I told him, I said. And I had a wish. I said, I'd like for you, if you feel only if you feel ready, I'd like for you to verbally commit before your senior year. And once again, I I got to tread carefully, but I am an opinionated person. I didn't want him to make a mockery of other schools with the hats, with the, oh, wait a minute, I changed my mind, all that stuff. I don't like that. It's not for me. It's not for us. It's not who we are. So, but if he wasn't ready, that's fine too. You can go all the way up to signing day. But some people, it's a game they're playing, you know, and the coaches do it too. But so what we did the year before was on our dime. I said, look, we'll go to all the schools you want to. We had to pay for it because you get 5 visits paid. And some people, I didn't want to waste people's time and money when we really had no, oh, but it's a paid trip or whatever.
Yeah.
Once again, we're wasting your time. That's not us. So the summer before, he was heavily recruited after his freshman year. So we spent a lot of time ahead of time doing all that. And it was getting hard. And it really kind of came down to Clemson and LSU at the end for him, and some other schools, obviously really good ones still in the mix. But he decided on LSU. You know, it was here, his people. You know, I think at the end of the day, it's just hard to get away from. He was born here. These are his people. You know, he wanted to represent them, and maybe it wasn't. Looking back now, obviously, it wasn't the best fit for him and so forth from a football standpoint. But it was LSU. It's hard to say no when you're a kid who plays football in Louisiana. So, and also he didn't want to be a distraction. He felt like, and I really respected him for this, because sometimes you forget where your feet are. And that's another thing I want to, you know, with the parents out there, like, where are your feet planted today? Where are your kids' feet planted today? And that loss hurt. I mean, they wanted to, he really, of course he did, right? They all wanted to win that state championship. Well, they still had, you know, Jamie graduated. Yeah. They still had a good team coming back their senior year.
No, they very well could have done it again.
One of the things, there's so many, you know, I'm just grateful for all 3 of my kids, but he handled his business. Talk about a man's man. He didn't want to be a distraction to the team, answering all these, you know, he didn't want his recruiting to affect, we're trying to win a state. Well, I'm a bar buck. Yeah. I mean, he is a prideful, he loves that school. He loves the community. It's still, when they lose, he feels it. When we talk now, you know, he's playing in his professional life, and he wants to know how Barb did. And of course, he can watch it now on his phone and all that. And the coaches, they're still close. I mean, he took so much pride. He was like, man, this is my senior year. I don't want to be dealing with all that stuff. So he verbally commits. I still had a few schools. Hey, can we still talk to him? I'm like, look, man, when he says it's done, like, it's over. But, you know, they don't give up. They don't give up. They don't give up.
I remember Clemson coming to, when it was known he was going to break the national record.
Yep.
And Clemson, they sent coaches.
Clemson did an unbelievable job of recruiting him. Jeff Scott, Chad Morris.
Then he ended up playing for Chad Morris.
Yep, he ended up playing for Chad at SMU. No, there's some, at the same time, James, that's what gives me hope. There's still some really good people out there. It's just the nature of that business, man, you know? And so the problem, you know, when kids get all this criticism, and some of it deserved, maybe, the coaches, you know, they're not always committed. They're here today, gone tomorrow, and they'll pull an offer if they feel somebody else is better, that, you know, the next day that offer was there is no longer there, you know? So I've seen it on both sides, you know? So
we went through
I don't like that part of it. I didn't care for that part of it. It was surreal to meet the Mac Browns, some of the legendary coaches, people that I really respected as a man and as a coach. Obviously, my kids really, you know, Kalen and Carter really enjoyed that part of it. I don't think Trey really enjoyed that much of it. He's more about playing. You know, don't get me wrong. It was, you know, to be in all those different venues and to talk shop with the Cliff Kingsburys and the really bright offensive minds. He enjoyed that part of it. But no, overall, it was an overwhelming process. I can see why. And so I feel compelled. People have reached out to me, and I've tried to help them navigate those waters, because it's very challenging. I don't envy some parents. Once again, you would think it's all fun and games, and can't imagine what it's like now with NIL, and so-and-so said they're going to pay me this, and now we're going to, you know, that we can up it there.
I haven't educated myself enough in it to really give an opinion.
Yeah.
But that's really, that's a lot of pros and cons.
Yeah. I think people knew our character. That never came up. You know, obviously that's hey man, money under the table, all that kind of stuff. I think people knew what we were about. None of that. I was never.
I think they do their research.
Yeah,
and they know who they can compromise and who they can't.
We weren't involved in anything like that. Everybody was very professional, followed the rules.
And Barb had a good reputation. Their integrity, just a football program.
Yeah.
They didn't, but if they'd have talked to any coach or anybody, they did any research on you, they knew that was not what y'all were about.
Yeah. So, we tried to handle it a certain way. I mean, it should be a fun part of a kid's life. And I think for the most part it was, but I think he was relieved to put it behind him. Mm-hmm. I think at the end of the day, he's never been a big attention seeker. Still to this day, he doesn't have a big social media presence. I think he really prided himself on, helping his team. He's always been that guy, like a team first guy. I'm really proud of him for that. All those guys, man. I mean, Ken and Trey would tell you how fortunate he is that he wouldn't have nearly the success. He's that position in particular, so dependent on the guy getting you the ball. And so I think those two individually would have done fine wherever they played because they're that talented. Together they were magic. Together they were very special.
There's no
and
argument
I
there.
tell you, it's what one of the funnest things for me still to this day is Trey's going to get asked about previous quarterbacks and all the people he'll always bring up Ken. He'll always hey, my high school quarterback had as strong an arm as this guy did or whatever. We all know how. If Kennon's 6'3", we're probably talking about him, instead of Patrick Mahomes right now. He was
that special of a kid. No, he's definitely. Well, Dave, I really, I'll tell you a quick story. One of my favorite one on Trey, just to say what kind of man he is if you remember, I may not remember when Trey played at SMU. Nick and I went, and Kenan went to a game.
Of course, I remember that. Yeah,
and so they do the walkout. Or they do the walk before the game or around the tailgate.
Yeah.
We're out there with y'all. And he stopped. And I don't think he knew we were coming. I don't know if he did.
I don't think he did.
He stopped and hugged everybody that was there to see him and didn't care how long it took.
Yep.
And that's something that I say you can teach. You can't teach, but you can lead.
Yeah.
More than teaching him, you led him, and you led him by example, and you led a lot of other kids. As a dad of a kid who's seen, and as a man who has seen a lot of troubled kids that didn't have an influence, man, I appreciate what you've done for the kids in our community. And something else we didn't touch on, I'll touch on real quick. You didn't just teach them sports,
right?
Where I got to know you more, I came and spoke. Or either I did, or the sheriff did, or Stitch did. Came every year to either if your basketball team, you were calling us.
Yep.
Your baseball team, you were calling. Your football team, you were calling us.
If I could jump in and piggyback on that, before we close, I didn't get a chance to go there because you were getting me to talk, and I really wanted to get back at you. But yourself, Tony, I think it's funny because when I hear the criticisms or the comments made about some of the things I did or we did or whatever, it really tells me sometimes people really didn't get the big picture. I can't tell you how many times. So I was big into the guest speakers. You were one. Yeah. Tony was one. I loved it. Had a lot of guys out there. To me, once again, look, if you saw me on the other dugout, which you did, we showed up trying to win. We were there to. Nobody likes losing. We're going to make an effort to win. Winning what? We weren't going to sell ourselves to the devil to win. It wasn't that. But while we were there, might as well try to win the game. So we were prepared to win. But I really didn't get in it, for the trophies and the medals and the records and all that kind of stuff. It was more that just raising kids, using it as a way to raise kids. One of the things that group remembers, that group in particular, instead of practicing one day, we went to the jailhouse. Tony got us in, and I think you were there.
I was.
I remember asking a few of them, the funnest part, right? It's like you had Jamie on the show, and you'll have some of these other guys. They're adults now.
Yeah.
And trust me, Ken and Fontenot, Peyton McLemore, they've been in my backyard. All right, guys, got to give it to me, when we were 8 or 9 or 10, and they give me some feedback, but they remember that's what they remember. I mean, they remember some of the fun stuff and all that, the games, but their first home run or whatever. They remember going to the jailhouse. They remember going, I do not want to be here. I do. Yeah. They remember Judge Candidate coming to talk to him about, what he saw in the courtrum sometimes.
Another great man.
Tony Mancuso.
Mhm.
I bring in some David LaFleur, one of my good friends. He was, pro athlete. And of course, his sons ended up doing really well. He's got one going to LSU now. But at the time, he had just finished up his pro career. And he was like, wow, man, I didn't think this was what youth football was all about. Well, this is how we roll,
Yeah.
I think more than anything, your speech, I remember that. I mean, all the things we did, if people weren't there to see it, which was fine. We weren't broadcasting it, but that's what went on behind the scenes that I hope in some way, it sounds like maybe it did, have an impact on those guys. So if we touch lives in some small way, if this podcast, helps parents out there navigate the waters, man, I'm there for them. I'm always willing to help people. We're still mentoring, trying to, it's hard. Like I said, with my kids, life's hard. And it's hard to get through this life alone. I don't think people should. I'm big. Obviously, God comes first. For me, a relationship with Him. But that's part of this community. That those kids, you guys were a big part of it. Our law enforcement supported us, man. That everything y'all were about. It's not just about dealing with the bad guys or whatever. It's like keeping people safe and trying to raise the say no to drugs. I mean, we used all those teams and sports as a vehicle to get those messages across.
So you coached, and I coached throughout the years, several hundred kids come through. You had more than most at the level of coach and being a little league coach, and you had more than most go to college. And then you have son who is playing in the NFL. That was just a few of them.
Yeah.
But every one of them, you know what they became? Every one of them became a man.
Yeah, I think so.
And that's what I know that you're the most proud of. Is you're proud of the ones who made it and made their high school team at a Barb High School and played the state football championship. But every one of them became a man.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee you they're a better man because of your influence on them. So I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
Something that if you're an in-studio guest, you get a bottle of McGee wine.
Oh,
I don't know if your wife drinks wine or if you drink wine.
She's gonna love
this. So something that I make, and it means a lot. I appreciate you supporting supporting
McGee. Okay.
I make it.
Okay.
So I appreciate you supporting me supporting this podcast, and I know you're going to help me make that one that we want to make happen with about that game. I think we're gonna start working on it, and we want to wait till Trey's playing. Let's just do a quick update. Trey's playing right now. He's playing for
Michigan Panthers, the UFL. They just won their first game this past Saturday. I think.
I thought it was Sunday. I missed it.
Yeah, I think they played this Sunday. It's a 10-game schedule. I think you can go on. It's theufl.com and get.
What's the closest? Would he play anywhere close to here?
Houston.
Playing Houston. Okay.
Yeah, I think in about 6 or 7 weeks they play at Houston. In a few weeks, we're going to try to go see him in San Antonio. They're at San Antonio. I'm
going to see if Jamie wants to go to Houston.
Well, tell Jamie he needs to watch this, and everybody who's been following has seen it. They won on a last-second 64-yard field goal by a kid who hasn't kicked a field goal since high school.
Wow.
And I'm like, how does this happen? He was a kickoff specialist in college.
Okay.
That was his first field goal made since high school. So talk about anything can happen if you just keep trying. This kid is I think his last name is Bates. Google him, look him up, because he's about all the right things too. Somebody did right with that kid. His parents did good.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. And I'm
good story.
See if I can get Jamie to
Jamie will
come out of shell and go to the game. That'd be awesome. So, well, I appreciate it, and hope y'all enjoy the wine, and we will definitely have you back if you will. So McGee and Quinn are out.